Welcome to the Potter Discussion.
Welcome back to the Potter Discussion, talking everything Harry Potter, Fantastic Beasts, and the Wizarding World fandom. I am your host, Oscar. Hello, everyone. This is episode 121. I just had to say it, of course. I just had to. Thank you, everyone who has joined me today. This is going to be a very, very fun episode because we are talking about Professor McGonagall. Throughout the entire story, Maggie Smith's Professor McGonagall, Minerva McGonagall, has played an instrumental role in the development of the story. That is, she is a warrior, she's a mentor, she is anything Harry needs her to be, and she's anything that will get her by. A very strong character, and someone that I will definitely enjoy breaking down because there's a lot to delve into here, and we're not going to get to it the entire thing today. We never do. We can definitely get over some of the overarching topics that I think are really interesting and will definitely help out this episode. Now, some housekeeping before we get into it. This Wednesday, we have another episode of The Quill and Ink coming out. I believe it is the 16th, correct me if I'm wrong, March 16th, around March 16th, The Quill and Ink is coming out. I was going to do the discussion of the Japanese trailer on the podcast because the Japanese trailer didn't launch, but I figured the one was just about enough, so I'm deciding that I'm going to do that on the email. And I'm mostly going to be focusing on Tina, because Tina has not been in the trailers. We saw her in a picture, though, so that's where we've seen Tina so far, in a picture. So we're going to be talking about that. Also, I did a poll on Instagram at ThePotterDiscussion talking about whether you think Tina is in the Fantastic Beasts and where to find them 3. And there were some very interesting responses that I think you will definitely enjoy hearing about on the Quill and Ink. So make sure you sign up for that. And when you sign up, you get a perfect guide to a Harry Potter marathon for free. Again, that is a guide to a Harry Potter marathon that will just make your movie watching experience just that much better. So make sure you sign up for that. And that is just about it. So let's get into it. All right, so the first big topic I want to start off with is, who is she? Who is Professor McGonagall? What does she do in the story? As we start out with all these breakdown episodes, well, I think her two biggest traits are she is very smart, she's very wise, and she is very strong. I think the two main places her strength come from are her allegiance with Dumbledore and how she has kind of seen him fight, him do whatever. She's kind of learned from that. But also, she has been portrayed by Maggie Smith, who knows the strength of the character. In the books, it was no problem for McGonagall to be written as this strong character, but for it to be translated into the movies, I think that was the biggest challenge. When she was, I think that definitely solidified her position as a strong character in the series, because Maggie Smith knew the character. She knew exactly how to put herself out there in such a way that would show the strength, the inner strength and the outer strength of Professor McGonagall. It might be difficult to see it because when you think of Professor McGonagall, all you really see is just her tapping Draco on the shoulder with a roll of parchment on the first year. But it really, if you go farther than that, if you really think about what's after that, I think it's definitely easy to see how she is the strong character that we really know her as. And the first and second books were really difficult for her to show her strength, only because there were no real opposition that she had to face. The moment I'm coming back to is in the Deathly Hallows Part 2, where she casts the Pier-Totem Locomotor, and all of the statues come to life, and they all jump down, and then she goes, Hogwarts is under attack, do your duty to the school, protect the boundaries. And they all march off, all the statues march off, and then she goes, I always wanted to use that spell. Of course, we all laugh at that every single time. So that I found really funny, and really a big moment for her, which is just perfect because that is exactly what she does. She really brightens the story, too. I mean, you can really think of a moment where of course there are moments when she's somber, But I think Dumbledore's death is really the only moment where she's like not brightening or, making like quick remarks or like has a sharp tongue. I think that's how she can kind of stay on top of the tide and not just get swallowed in with the rest of the teachers. Like Professor Sprout is the kind of person I would imagine Professor McGonagall would be if she wasn't the kind of sharp-tongued, quick-witted person that she was, if she didn't want to be the person that she was. I think Professor Sprout is definitely the kind of person that is just like is nice just because like her default setting is smiling and being generous, which is awesome. Those people are just fantastic to have just in general, and I think that's what Professor McGonagall would be if she didn't want to be the person she was, if that makes any sense. She wanted to be strict. She wanted to have that authority over people just so they would stay in line so she could continue protecting the world that they lived in. I think she did try at least to be nice. She did at least try to be, somewhat charitable. But she had no patience for people who didn't think that way. And she really despised fakes and people who weren't honest, because those were the kind of people that she just had no patience for, like Lockhart. She was happy to send him into the Chamber of Secrets. She was happy to. But for people like Harry, she knew that Harry wasn't faking his skill or his talent or whatever you want to call it. So she liked him. And Draco, although he was a very talented wizard, he did have his father buy him onto the Quidditch team, stuff like that. So Professor McGonagall didn't like that very much. Even if he didn't, I think McGonagall would find his position, Draco's position, as one that she could sympathize with. Because, yes, as I said before, she was strict. She had a firm grasp, and she definitely drove the wheel with a firm hand. But she knew which direction to drive in general, which I think is why she managed to be the person she was, like I said before, and maintain her place. Snape, McGonagall, and Dumbledore were really the core three on the teaching staff. They knew what was going on, and they knew exactly what was happening. So McGonagall knew that she had to kind of oppose Snape, because Snape wanted to be good. He wanted to be good so bad, and he was working with the Dark Lord. Now, McGonagall is good. She is good, and she is not working with the Dark Lord. So she thinks she had to keep that position, because Snape, I think it was much easier for Snape to stay in with the Dark Lord at where he was, because he had to gain his trust. But McGonagall did not have to work to stay in with Dumbledore like Snape, but she had to work to stay nice. It's a lot easier to be mean than it is to be nice for a lot of people. And I think McGonagall is just like that. She is very, very not Snape. I mean, she is the polar opposite of Snape, and they both knew it. So McGonagall had to really work to keep her place as the anti-Snape, not really to put him in his place, but really just to keep the scales in balance, because Dumbledore was really the one who was holding up the plates, and McGonagall and Snape were on them, and he did not want to outweigh the balance to one or another, so McGonagall had to keep the scales balanced, so to speak, which I think is how she also built her character, because she knew exactly what she had to do to stay there, and she did that without tiring at all. So that was a very long description of kind of who she is, of where she stands, and how she keeps going. Alright, so now I want to talk about what is her role and how does she relate to Harry. So this is something that I think is also very important to her character, and something that I think is also very important to the story, because her relation to Harry, or her relationship to Harry, is really where this whole this whole picture ties together. So to Harry, I think she acts as a protector. Now, not in the sense that she is always hovering over him, her wand raised, ready to zap a fly out of the air if whenever it would dare approach Harry, but she steers him in the right direction, almost like a parent. Molly and Arthur and Minerva, I think, were just the people that guided Harry in his life. Dumbledore was the one who taught him how to live, but McGonagall really taught him how to have a life in the first place. Not that he wouldn't know how to walk without him, but of course without parents, Harry just didn't know the basic things. So he needed the people like Molly. He needed people like Minerva to show him really where to go. And I think that's where her value comes in as a person, with Harry is that she showed him the way, and Harry would likely be clueless in the ways of Hogwarts without Minerva, because of as an inside person. And of course, I know you're thinking, well, Molly went to Hogwarts, Arthur went to Hogwarts. Come on, like why can't they tell him? Well, they went to Hogwarts, but kind of a long time ago. So like they had like two different groundskeepers. Og was the groundskeeper when Molly was in school. So if that tells you anything, they of course know how to do it, and they could definitely tell Harry how to lead a good life in Hogwarts. But Minerva's there. Minerva could really know what's happening. She could definitely help Harry out as much as he needs. Because Harry really needs that inside person. He really needs to know exactly what's happening just in general. He really has no sense of what's happening in Hogwarts without people really telling him what's happening. And it kind of sounds bad, but Harry would really have no clue what was happening at all if he wasn't just directly being informed. He could, of course, figure it out, but if we think back to it, it's Hermione that tells him where the basilisk is. It's Dumbledore who really tells him how to defeat Voldemort. And Harry needs those people in his life, like Minerva, to show him the way and to give him a good example of what a person should be. Minerva really helped Harry out with his figuring out his life and knowing exactly what to do at Hogwarts. All right, now let's talk strengths and weaknesses. What are some of Minerva's strengths? Well, I think the two, again, that we mentioned before, are definitely the most prevalent. She is strong and she is smart. The two traits that a true hero should have, a heroine like McGonagall should have. She really comes out of the store, she really pops out, and she really knows how to use her talents. But her weaknesses, I think, are a place that are interesting because she doesn't have many. I mean, as a person at her stature, she can't really afford to have many. But what she does, I think her main weakness, the main thing that really stops her from doing the things that she would usually do, are she is scared of Voldemort. As anyone is, she knows the true volume, the true horribleness of what he is, the true violence of Voldemort. Because she is one of the only people who was old enough to fight in the when the Dark Lord was actually in power before in the Dark Ages. So she knows firsthand exactly just how terrible he is, and I think that holds her back. The people that know the true extent of Voldemort's power are the ones that are the most scared of him. And although that might not be the best, as they have had the most time to really learn their craft as magical people, they would be the most useful in a battle, but they aren't. I think it definitely helps because of course fear is what keeps you alive. If that's even true in the real world. If you're scared to jump off a cliff, it's your body saying no because you're gonna die. And so when people are scared of the Dark Lord, it's saying their bodies are just telling them do not go near him because he will kill you. And that's not great. That's not great for the good side because that means people don't want to go near him. But it's kind of the same for the Death Eaters. It's Dumbledore for them. The Dark Lord for Harry is Dumbledore for the Death Eaters. So it's kind of everyone's scared of everyone kind of situation, but McGonagall is particularly scared of the Dark Lord. And I think we see that fear being vanquished. It's unfortunately the very last second, but when she's battling Voldemort with Kingsley and I want to say Flitwick at the very end, their very end battle in the Great Hall. Of course, it's Bellatrix. So Ginny, Hermione, and I want to say someone like Ron, maybe Luna, are battling Bellatrix, and Kingsley, McGonagall, and maybe either Molly or Flitwick were battling Voldemort all at once. So that, I think, is where her strength against Voldemort comes from, the fact that she is not alone in being afraid of him. Everyone, I mean, except for Harry, is very, 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 very afraid of Voldemort. And now, in the battle that she was with other people, and and that she could see that she was not alone in that fear was when she could really come out of it. Her main worry was that she was alone, that no one else was afraid, and she knew that everyone else was scared of Voldemort, but it was just the fact that she wanted to be, she did not want to be alone in her own personal fear of him. But when she saw that she wasn't at all, that really pulled her out of the darkest part of the spiral of actually being afraid of Voldemort, and that's kind of where her fear just slowly dissipated. And when he died, of course, it was gone because there was no more person to be afraid of. So I think her afraidness, I just like a fear. That word just didn't refuse to come to me. Her fear came from her worry that she was alone in her own phobia of Voldemort, and that she would never come out of it. But in the battle, when she realized that she was not alone, and when they killed Voldemort once and for all, her fear of him was finally vanquished, and she could move on in her life. Now I want to talk about how the story would be different without her. So she plays a huge role in the story, as we have been talking about the whole time. She's had some great moments, she's had some amazing victories, but that means that without her, the story would have likely crumbled. So I want to go over just a few things that would be different if she was, in fact, not in this story. Now, I think it would be different if she was, but she just didn't do the same things, or if her character just didn't exist. I think it would be better if her character just didn't exist, in terms of if she didn't do anything or if she didn't exist. Because if she didn't exist, that means that the people who would usually have not done anything would have had to step up, and the gap kind of would have been filled. But if Professor McGonagall was there, and she just didn't do the things that she usually did, that hole would just be there forever, because no one could fill a peg that McGonagall was already in. But if McGonagall didn't do anything in the position that she was, no one else could do anything either, because they needed to be where she was in order to make the change that McGonagall did. That was long-winded, but so let's just talk about it. If she was not in the story at all, if her character just did not exist, I think a lot of the same things would happen. I think Harry would do the same things, just in general. I think Molly would, have a bigger role in Harry's life, because we were talking about before. Harry really needs that kind of person in his life to tell him exactly what to do, but if she wasn't in his life, if McGonagall was not there, I think, again, Molly would have to step up, but also, Harry wouldn't have the same comfort at Hogwarts. Gryffindor is kind of his pillow. Everyone, that's where he has his friends, that's where the warmth is. And Dumbledore is really his teacher. Lupin is the only person. He has 4 people in his life that are actually care about him at Hogwarts. It's Dumbledore, Ron, Hermione, and then Lupin for a year. So without those people, he really has no one else to talk to. He's no one else to interact with, and he's no one else to get advice from and just draw strength from. So McGonagall had to be there to really give him the strength that he needed to continue forward. But if he wasn't there, that means if McGonagall was not that. If McGonagall wasn't there, that means Harry needed to draw that strength from someone else, which is very difficult, because that kind of strength does not come from nowhere, and Harry really needed that kind of power from someone, because he could not draw it out himself. He needed someone else to show him exactly how to get it, the kind of motivation inside himself, and the kind of drive to go out, find all the Horcruxes, and destroy them. But then comes the question of if McGonagall was there, but she just didn't do anything. If she wasn't there, it would have been, all of her duties would have been fulfilled by someone else, and Harry just would have been a little more clueless. But if she was there and she didn't do anything, I think they would have lost the war. I mean, it's as simple as that. We can see how much Professor McGonagall does in terms of helping the war effort. She's a part of the Order of the Phoenix. She enchants the statues. Of course, I'm going back to that. She commands the battle. She does all of that. And yet she still stays ahead of the tide of just becoming another teacher. Her work has just become this huge thing that people cannot do, that other people just find it very difficult to do, which is why if she wasn't there, again, multiple people would have to pick up where she left off. But if she was there and she just didn't, she ignored her duties and she just sat in her office eating newts all day, she definitely would not be the kind of person that we see her as, and Maggie Smith would definitely not have gotten the part, because Maggie Smith is not the kind of person who would just sit around lazily, going, oh yeah, do that, oh this paper gets an F because I don't know. The character of McGonagall would have been vastly different if she didn't have the part in the story that we see her have. And I think that's really the bottom line. Everything changes when the duties of the character change, which is why we see Lupin's role change when he's not a teacher. That's why we see Dumbledore's role change when he's not even alive anymore. That's, I think, why Professor McGonagall is a very different person if she did not have the duty she usually would. So let's get into some of her best moments. Some of McGonagall's absolute best moments just of all time in the story. What has she done well? What things has she done that no one else has? Let's talk about it. So I'm going to skip over the Pietro and Locomotor only because that has happened so many times. We've already talked about that so much. So I'm going to skip over the time she enchanted all those statues. And I'm going to skip to, let's call it the duel. The duel she had with Snape. That, I think, is one of her best moments. She stood up to a teacher of more, if not of equal, if not more skill than her, and still beat him. She knew that it was her duty to get rid of Snape, even though that Snape was not wanted to get rid of. McGonagall needed him out. She needed the castle to be hers. She needed the world to kind of become a positive for Hogwarts for the battle. So when she battled Snape, when Snape drew his wand to Harry, McGonagall stepped in front of Harry and took the duel. And she shot the fire. That's the sound the fire makes. And Snape dodged it. He deflects it, and actually, if you play back that scene, he deflects it at the Carrows and at the Death Eaters behind him to get rid of them too. As he's going out, that just shows the goodness of Snape. And then he does his great bad smoky cloak, black tissue flying thing. And he's gone. So that, I think, is one of her best moments. And another one is just a line that she has. And when it's when they're putting up the great bubble around Hogwarts. So they finish it, then Flitwick is like, Minerva, this is never gonna keep the Dark Lord out. This is never going to keep you-know-who out. But McGonagall says, you might as well call him by his real name, Voldemort. He's going to kill you either way. So that was another part that I thought McGonagall crushed. She understood the magnitude of the situation. She called to her peers and said, we're going to die, but let's do it together. Kind of dark, but I don't know. She still knew that was a moment to take control. She still knew that was their moment to rise up and really shake the world. That is where McGonagall knew that the Voldemort was their target, and that was when she started to chip away at her fear and really open the door of her phobia. Voldemort, Voldemort, Voldemort. She cried out his name. So I think that another was one of my favorite McGonagall moments, one of her best moments. Now, the third and final moment that I really saw strength in McGonagall was when Harry and Ron were late for Transfiguration class. They ran up, and then they kind of ran to a stop and said, "Oh, I'm so glad that Professor McGonagall isn't here." But then they saw the cat on the desk, and that's Professor McGonagall. She jumps off, transfigures into a human, and Ron says, "That was brilliant." And then McGonagall says, "Thank you for that assessment, Mr. Weasley." But then she goes on to say, "Maybe it would be more useful if I were to transfigure you and Mr. Potter into a pocket watch. Then maybe one of you would be on time." Alright, this is a classic Professor McGonagall, a gotcha line. Harry and Ron just walked right into that one. So that one I laugh at every single time because McGonagall is just like, "No, sorry, I'm shutting you down. Mute. And she sees that they are never going to be on time again, so she just goes, just be on time. And then they're like, okay. And then they're on time forever. That, I think, are some of Professor McGonagall's best moments. There are so many more, and I would encourage you to tell me of any more that you see should have been on this list you can go send me DM on Instagram at ThePotterDiscussion or an email, PotterDiscussion@gmail.com for anything that you want to tell me about Professor McGonagall. But let's move on to one final topic before we go, and I think that final topic would be, if we could change anything about her, what would it be? So this is going to be a topic that we have to really think about, because Professor McGonagall is the kind of person that has everything figured out. She has her clothes laid out 2 weeks beforehand. She has her breakfast already made, and she knows exactly what she's gonna have. She lives her life on a straight line, and she knows that she will never waver from that. So changing something in her schedule, I think, is something that is very difficult for her, because she sees that as a pathway to failure. She sees that if she changes her daily life, her life will just crumble apart. Not necessarily in the fact that if she doesn't like take the same walk every morning, in the sense that she doesn't teach the same lesson, that she wants to be consistent. I think that's the right word. She's afraid of being inconsistent, and she wants to be on the same path. So I think that is what we'd change about her. Her being okay. Professor McGonagall being okay with not doing the same thing every single time, because it works. I mean, it works very well. But at a certain point, we need to show Professor McGonagall that there's more than one way to do something. And she needs to see that for herself, and she needs to understand that life goes on. Life goes on if you don't do something that you did the day before at the same exact time, the same exact way. I think this will apply to things like her teaching, like her life, but it would also apply to things like her confidence, like her strength. She has great, I guess you call them scores in both of those, but she is just petrified that they will be damaged by something that happens. She is petrified that she will not be able to move forward, and she is terrified, of course, of the world just coming to a close. Coming to a close with an S. So that, I think, is one big thing I would change about her. I would give her time, and I would give her space to expand and evolve into more than one kind of person. So that is that. Thank you for listening all the way to this episode. I was worried I wouldn't finish in time. I woke up way too late today. It was like 10 when I woke up, so I cannot bear being late. I'm like Professor McGonagall. I cannot bear being. I have to do the same thing every single day at the same time. So I even have to shorten my morning walk to get here. It was so hard, but I will take an afternoon walk to make up for it. I'm starting to see that's the thing I would change about me too. I would give myself room to not be petrified that I would do something wrong. Yeah. I mean, that's it. Thank you for listening so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed making it. I had this planned for a very long time. It was interrupted by the trailer, by a couple other ideas that I had that I just had to record. This is actually going to be episode 119. But then, of course, I went on my vacation, which was great. And then I went on my other vacation, which was awesome. 2 weeks I was gone, and then I did the trailer, and then I got to this. And next week's episode, I was going to have is 120. That didn't work out, obviously. But yeah, so I think this is definitely going to be a long string of things that are happening. So I'm glad that I have managed to make it thus far in recording this, and 125 is approaching. I'm not going to do anything special. It's 125, but still, as a milestone, I think I was just thinking about it, and based on the space between the movies of the Crimes of Grindelwald and this movie of the Secrets of Dumbledore, I think I'm gonna be at like episode 3 or even 400 by the time the next movie comes out. Movie 4, if movie 4 comes out, I think it will. But it's like thinking that far ahead just boggles my brain, because we have 52 episodes in a year, and say that it was like 4 years since the Crimes of Grindelwald came out in 2018. So that's 4 years. So 4 times 52, let's call it like 200, around 200 episodes. Yes, I'll be at episode like 325 by the time this comes out, by the time movie 4 comes out. But I'll be at like episode 1. I think I'll be at like episode 125 by the time the trailer comes out, because it is the 12th as I'm recording this. So I'll have recorded about another month's worth of episodes. But I am so excited to see this. I am so excited to see the movie to discover the answers. J.K. Rowling just did say that answers are given, as you will know if you read the latest edition of the Quill and Ink. But that's it. I rambled on long enough. Thank you for listening again. You can go follow me on Instagram. We are approaching 3,000 followers. If you want to be part of the 3,000 follower group, go ahead and go follow me on Instagram at ThePotterDiscussion. I want to do an episode all about the polls and quizzes that I've done on there soon. So make sure you go take part in that, because there's going to be an episode on it soon and you can be a part of it. So that will be very fun. Again, at ThePotterDiscussion on Instagram. And you can also send me a DM on Instagram if you have anything to say about McGonagall. And you send me an email. Anything else, that is ThePotterDiscussion at gmail.com. There are also the 2 links in the show notes below for the SpeakPipe page link and the Google form link for anything you want to hear or say on the show. But that is all the stuff I want to say today. Thank you for listening, and as always, remember that happiness can be found even in the darkest of times, if one only remembers to turn on the light. I'll see you later.
This was the Potter Discussion.